It's another Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com. I have a very special guest this week, Raj Singh from Mozilla. He is the VP of New Products over there, which is very impressive. But also, Raj, you've been making stuff throughout your whole career and really had a lot of success in creating startups and cool projects, going all the way back to like ringtone days to now early AI before it was cool. Like pre-2015, not even pre-2022. We're talking early AI days. Of all those projects, what do you feel like you've learned for solopreneurs that are people breaking out on their own? Because I feel like this economy is going to get really weird and people are going to have to figure out how to make their own businesses if not already.
When I was working on my first startup, I dropped out of master's. I was during my master's at university. It wasn't in vogue. There was the dot-com boom, but it was like a lot of people didn't understand what you were doing. And it just wasn't the popular thing to do. I was doing startups pretty much through the great financial crisis. It wasn't really until Web 2 emerged, incubators like Y Combinator and Tech, but some of the others emerged. And in 2009, 2010 timeframe, Yahoo Dogpatch, all this stuff, that started becoming in vogue, start your own company. And then Fang reacted by like massively increasing everyone's salaries and created all this competitive pressure. It was very interesting watching that whole era. I would say it's been phenomenal watching, or let me take a step back. Each time there's some breakthrough, we effectively make it easier for builders. So when I think about the stuff I was building in 2002, I was doing a college dating site. I had to physically go to a Rackspace, manage my server, or you can buy a virtual private server, but often you'd be dealing with like physical server rack units, hardware. It was just, there was lift, there was work. There was friction. It wasn't like you could just go and start something tomorrow. And then here comes Amazon Web Services, 2008, 2009 timeframe. A number of these like WYSIWYG intermediate app building kind of tools emerged to make iOS development easier, cross-platform stuff, whatever. It's still very early days. You still need to understand frameworks. You had to do a lot of configuration on your own. Obviously, you need to be able to write code. But you had a cloud now. And all of a sudden, that was like a first massive sort of simplification, right? And then fast forward 2015, like emergence of React, 2000s of React, everything just became web-based. The browsers became better. Everything basically written in like JavaScript, which is amazing. That changed everything again, because now all of a sudden we're past like C+, and we're past Java, and we're past like having to know multiple potential languages. People were doing Webflow. And at the time, I think Adobe had something Cold Fusion. I don't even remember now, but there was multiple different scripting languages, whatnot. So that was another sort of breakout. And then we had collaborative design emerge, like Figma kind of invented the multiplayer mode. And that was another sort of significant break. And in this whole period, a number of SDK vendors emerged to manage your billing, like Stripe, things to manage authentication, to make storage easier. The cloud got better. And so I look at this like evolution. Now, somebody probably could do a great plot, maybe AI. And you can look at, and then 2022, obviously AI and coding tools emerged, and now agents, right? Like basically as a builder, it's gotten easier and easier. The friction keeps going down. And now really the question is taste, judgment, creativity, but frankly, trust and distribution. Because in the end, you could build anything you want for yourself, which is great. But if you want to build something and turn it into a business, how do you get people to trust you? How do you get people to believe you're the best one to use versus something else? And right now, everything is very fickle. Everything's moving very fast. And so that's become very challenging for a lot of companies.
I'm glad you just said that. You just said the mission statement for Avenue 9 and what we do with our Human First AI marketing is like, in a world where you can build anything, the question is, what are you going to build and who's it for? And how are you going to earn their trust? So I think that's huge. So now I'm going to give the mission statement for your current project, because I feel like, judging by the amount of hair on our heads and gray in our beards, we're about the same age. I started designing websites in high school where I had to write the HTML code by hand. And then you got Dreamweaver. And then, like you said, we've started to get tools like Webflows and WYSIWYG editors and all kinds of cool things. But now your latest project, Solo, which is at soloist.ai from Mozilla, if you want to start a business, you can just start a business. You don't have to learn website code. You don't have to afford a developer. You don't have to use a cheesy like Squarespace space site or template site from GoDaddy. You can really build really cool stuff really fast and start either testing ideas or just starting to look like a professional in a really short amount of time with very little dollars invested.
Yeah, I actually call this the ownership economy. COVID had a lot of byproducts, like that whole period of remote work, remote stay at home, whatever, things were closed, whatnot. It obviously spun up a number of trends, and many of these trends have reversed, and many of these trends did not make it, but some things have survived. Amazing. Please don't ever go away, right? But one of the things that came out of that was people had a lot more time. People forgot, or wow, how much time do I spend commuting? This is insane, right? And all of a sudden, they're like, I can get more work done while working from home. Now, I'm not necessarily, just to be clear, that's a whole nother topic, the sort of advocacy around like remote work versus in person. And I have very different opinions on that, like depending on stage company, what you're working on and whatnot. But independent of that, I think what this really sparked was people were like, wow, I can also, I have more time and I'm still getting like all my work done. Let me go pursue some passion projects and see if I can make some money on the side. A lot of people are doing things that they don't like truly enjoy. This is just reality, right? They chose a career path and they realize they really enjoy music, but there's not a lot of money in music, and so they can't spend time there. Or they really enjoy mural painting, or they just really enjoy messing with plumbing fixtures, but it's not like a day-to-day job for them, whatever. So now in this new ownership economy, getting started was a little bit harder. You had to go, often people think about the first step being a website, but they set that up and they're like, okay, I need business cards. If they're kind of more an old school business, whatever, I need email address. They start working through the list. And it was a stack of different services. It was hard to personalize. You end up spending a bunch of money every month. You're like, why do I pay for all these things? I don't need all these things, whatever. But now it's easier. It's getting easier. It's getting even easier, right? And it's tailored to your taste and your brand in the way that you want it. And I think that's all very amazing. And I think one of the reasons I really like working on Solo, it's one of a few products I manage, and this sort of entire small business community is, it's like we're enabling small business entrepreneurs, right? It's like, it's very aligned with sort of the Mozilla mission statement. It's like business out of a box. We're helping the underdogs, right? And I do feel the future of economies around the world have been driven by small business. Although small business may not be spending as much as a big enterprise, it's small business that makes things go around. And big fan of this category, and I think it's only growing.
Yeah, I think so too. And I could be wrong, but I see this as I love that term, enshittification, that as everything like you could possibly want becomes available cheap and poor quality on like Amazon or something, and you can get it that afternoon. It was like what we were talking about in a world where you can build anything. Like if you can buy anything, the question then to me becomes, what are you going to buy or who are you going to engage with? And it does seem to, for me, to go back full circle of sure, Google or Amazon might have every answer, or Facebook might have every person on the planet that I want to meet, but it becomes really difficult and it becomes really watered down. And we actually haven't spoken that much about AI yet, but AI too allows people to create anything. And so you're like, when there's a million books out there and they're all written by AI slop, something that has a real personality, or a small business or an artist, like you said, we can create AI music, but somebody that really hones their craft becomes more valuable in a world with AI slop, because it's not just the only place where you can get something, but it's the only place where you can get something good or original. And I think it has to stay that way because nobody really wants or likes the AI slop out there.
Yeah, I call this signal noise ratio, right? So the amount of noise has obviously gone way up. And so now people are looking for signals. Now, historically, when we looked for signals, it could be review sites, it could be referrals, it could be recommendations, it could be friends, it could be professionals that we work with, peers, who knows, right? All these sort of different places you look for signals. The problem is in a maximally infinite creationist world, like you can build infinity builders, whatever you want to call it. What is the system to figure out what we should spend our energy on? And it's become hard. And to no surprise, if you look at a large number of startups, they've built great products, but they have very little usage. And it's just really hard to get distribution. In the traditional sense, distribution used to be throw paid dollars at it, user acquisition, get PR, but those tactics don't necessarily work anymore because the volume of noise is so high. And as I said at the beginning of the conversation, I think a lot of this comes down to brand and reputation, and brands are worth a lot now. It's worth a lot. So if you're somebody who's trusted, then people will engage, right? And so I think this is the process.
Now, I think that's really powerful. And I want to let that sit for a second. But I also want to ask you a really tough question, which is I feel like it's a bad time to be in software development. We were even speaking before we hit record. We're like, now with AI developers and Claude Code, any big player doesn't necessarily need to buy you if you don't have that brand and that trust, because they can just build it. They can just roll it in, and they don't need to hire 10,000 programmers to rebuild your proprietary code. They can just have AI spin it up and put it into your platform. So I've seen big startups. I forget who it was now. I really need to look it up again, but they just decided to close their doors. They were like, you know what? There's actually no reason why you would ever need to use our tool again now that it's like in Google or whatever. And
Yeah,
like, we're not going to
I'm
bleed
not,
cash.
I'm not totally there yet. I do agree. You may not need 10,000 people. So two sort of comments here.
Yeah.
The junior engineer is at risk because AI is definitely doing the scaffolding. It's definitely doing the first pass. It's definitely doing 90% of what we need to get there. Engineers are not at risk. 100%. People still need to review code. There's architectural decisions. There's places where things go RE or wrong. There in some ways there's some level of prompt intuition in engineering, because even if you're not writing code, understanding how best to describe how the data flow should work, or how it should be organized, or how the schema should look, or whatnot, this requires some level of technical depth and understanding. Now, does that change in 5-10 years? I don't know. Does it get to a point where it's like truly turned?
Well, the question there, and not to derail you, I want to hear your other point, but if in a world where we don't have junior engineers, how do we get senior engineers in 10 to 20 years?
Yeah. So in 10, 20 years, that's the question. Do we hit that point? And one of the things I always tell people, the thing about programming, which is easier for AI than English, is programming is deterministic. And what I mean by that is when you write a piece of software, it either works or it doesn't work. But when you speak, the inflection of your voice, the tonality, the word choice, the way you present it could mean completely different things, the same sentence. And so for AI, it's much harder to understand English than it is to understand code. Code is like logic, and logic could be automatable. I think the problem then becomes, in some ways, the output of AI is the average of the internet, right? So it's generic. You build a generic experience, you enter something you want, and you get a generic experience. So a lot of it still comes down to your own taste and judgment, figuring out what's important. I'm hearing from product teams new challenges where roadmaps are getting overloaded because individuals on the team are just like vibe coding it up and adding it. And I'm like, that's fine, but it's a feature to have less features too. And so, because that simplifies the experience and that makes it easier to message. And so there's risks all around. You don't just add anything just because you can. I think hard to predict how this will look in 5-10 years, but for sure, I don't see engineering necessarily going away, not at all.
What about the idea of a tech startup, though? That I know you've been acquired several times, which is great. Do you consider, and I'm surprised that Firefox and Mozilla haven't been it's swallowed up by, I guess it would just be the complete monopoly at that point. It would probably get blocked. But how do you see that going forward in a world where we were talking about one of our favorite AI tools is Whisperflow, of amazing dictation. You click two buttons on my keyboard and it learns my language. I can correct my speech and it'll transcribe everything, even do formatting for me, and save me a ton of time and carpal tunnel syndrome with Whisperflow. But anybody could rebuild that functionality now in today's world. There's not anything necessarily proprietary stopping Microsoft, Apple, or Google from just building it in.
This is more of a macro question. I don't think it's Whisperflow specific.
Yeah.
There's a thing we used to joke about when I used to build mobile stuff, was the general consumer was super excited for WWDC and for Apple's big reveal in the fall, because this is the opportunity to see the new devices, they see what's being released. And those are the days I hated the most, because those are the days I was like, okay, what category did Apple decide to crush and natively build into the OS today, right?
Yeah.
To be like iOS 6, and they're like, oh, iOS 2, we're gonna build in an alarm app. All of a sudden, all the alarm apps are gone, right? iOS 10, we're gonna build in maps. All of a sudden, all the third-party map apps are gone. This pattern has repeated itself. They look at popular categories and they build alternatives. They built their own notes-taking app, they built their own to-do app, etc. And so you have to look at other leverage points. But a lot of the apps that people choose to use where they're not using native Apple stuff. Often it's because of cross-platform needs. They want to make sure it works on the desktop, maybe on the web. Maybe they need it from another device that's not a MacBook. Who knows, right? It's case by case. I think.
Do you have any other? I don't want to jump in there, but do you have any other advice for like founders? I feel like ChatGPT is doing the same thing. That if you build a custom GPT that solves a problem and gets any traction, surprise, that's the next feature rollout. Or any integrations into OpenAI that start using a ton of tokens. They go, oh,
Yeah. So
top 10 tokens are our feature lists here.
So in general, if you think about ways to create a moat, one, is there proprietary data or personal data that you have access to that they can't get access to that gives you advantages? Two, is there a very heterogeneous ecosystem or fragmented ecosystem such that you could build something that's massively cross-platform and that creates compounding advantage? So the fact that, let's take WhisperFlow, for example, maybe I use Android with MacBook and I use an iPad, whatever, and I just want my dictionary to all be synced across them and I don't want to deal with it. I'm willing to deal with that. It's like an advantage. Another common one is there custom workflow stuff that is hard to replicate, right? So if you think about the experiences that the native platform might build, they're going to try to get 80% of the way there, but they're not going to do the note-taking app that integrates into your Trello board and integrates into your Jira experience. So you can write a note there and it quickly just automatically posts there, right? So are there integrations? Are there like custom workflows, things like that? I think the fourth common example is Teams. Is it a type of experience that is a multiplayer kind of experience where not individual, because the stuff you typically build, if you look at password sharing, right? A lot of people still don't use the native password sharing stuff that's baked into the OS because doesn't work as well when you want to share across families or team members, but it works okay, but not well. But that's why they use third-party ones, because their family and team members, whatever, are using different devices and different whatnot. So I think there are ways to mitigate and compete. And these are just examples of strategies. Like with all startups, and I've built a lot of startups, there's windows. And there's a window of opportunity where an exit may happen or an opportunity to get that next round of funding or whatever it might be. And then if you decide not to act on that window, which you may not want to for a really good reason, because you're doing fine or your product's working or whatever, then the next window may not emerge for years. And that's just the nature of how this game plays. You brought up WhisperFlow early, obviously a huge fan of the product, but at the same time, if I was a PM at WhisperFlow, I'd be thinking a lot about how do I create lock-in? Right now, I don't think the dictionary vocabulary is worth that much. You can replicate it pretty quickly, export it pretty quickly. And we fully expect that their experience is going to be one hotkey away, natively baked in to the platforms, into Windows and Mac OS and iOS and Android, etc. The fundamental issue is the transcription sucks on a lot of these services, and they haven't really nailed that user experience, but it's going to happen. Is it 1 or 2 or 3 years from now? I don't know. And in that time, WhisperFlow is going to build a more substantial lead, and they'll have a marketing list and someone they can email against and whatnot. But it will significantly cap growth, no doubt about it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think about a lot of the projects you work on, and we don't necessarily have to go backwards or keep going this, but I find it fascinating in the world of AI that there is this huge opportunity now where I realize even just what I was doing with marketing, I could do my day job that I was doing for a very large international company in a tenth of the time that I could start my own business, do it for 10 companies and try and make 10 times the amount of money.
Yeah, I think this is the big unlock, right? This is when I meet people who still haven't played with AI or maybe skeptical that it's even useful. And there's still some of I wouldn't call them doomers at this point, but there's still people who are making claims that it's not necessarily useful. I'm just taken aback because the benefit that people are seeing across industries, just personal life, people having personal struggles are leaning on AI. AI is incredibly empathetic. Humans, we don't often revisit our priors. We don't often we make a judgment or decision or recommendation or whatever, and we don't want to admit we're wrong. But AI, if you push it, it'll be like, you know what, I think I was wrong. It's a truth-seeking tool. Humans aren't always truth-seeking because we believe in confirmation bias. We want a certain truth. But AI is looking for truth without previous bias. It may have obviously some bias in the training or whatnot, but for the most part, it's totally willing to be wrong and say, hey, I'm wrong. Let me revisit that. And that's not something a human would often admit. And so I think when you think about that and you think about how much empathy they create because of that, it's helping people at all levels. I don't care if it's like personal life stuff. I don't care if it's like scheduling. It's dealing with different customers and the emotional stuff there. I don't know if it's work related. There's just so many different ways. I'm doing home construction right now, so it's helping me think through that stuff. So it's just phenomenal.
Maybe I can narrow you down into the AI for solopreneurs and we can talk about some of our favorites right now because you obviously have one with Solo to build a website, but you've also built smart schedulers and calendars in your career. You've built meeting transcriptions and stuff. And those are two in my top list. I tell people if they do not have a meeting AI, get that one. Also, with the amount of meetings that I book with clients and for podcasts, if I didn't have Calendly, I would be spending an insane amount of time on this. So I have other tools. I think just a chat GPT or a generic one, something to help you write is great. And then some sort of content creator. My favorite is Gamma for the presentation creator. If you're in sales and marketing, that's going to save you just decades of time building PowerPoint decks. So those are my top lists. What about you? For solopreneurs, what are the best ways to use AI or your favorite tools
So
out
the
there?
funny thing is, as counterintuitive as this sounds, I often get asked, what are this kind of question, like for the average solopreneur. And the average solopreneur is not a tech person. The average solopreneur does car detailing. The average solopreneur has a car wrap business. They have a on-demand barbershop. They're whatever it is, right?
For sure.
They're not tech savvy. They're like, hey, Raj, what should I use? They're not looking for 5 different tools. I know us in tech, we're like, what are all the different things we're using? I've played with a lot of these things. I don't care if it's 11 Labs. Lately, I've been playing with the Claude bot, which is like the personal assistant on your desktop. I'm playing for Claude for work, things like that. I always tell them, I don't care. Just choose one thing. You want to go use ChatGPT? Fine. You want to go use Google Gemini? Fine. It will get you 98% of the way there. Now, what'll happen is they're going to hit a point and be like, hey, Raj, what do you suggest? I need to generate some short form videos. I'm like, okay, let's go look at Real Farm or something like that, or whatever it is, right? Or, hey, I need to make business cards and it's not working out too well. I'm like, Canva has some AI stuff. We can do business cards there, but we could even do it in Stitch or something like whatever. So I think there's, or where should I put all my invoices? I'm like, oh, let's go look at Notebook LM or who knows, right? So things will emerge. But in general, I tell them 98% of what you need to do, you can just do in that one tool. And the greatest unlock is just get started. Because I think the biggest challenge is many people play with it and they don't know what to ask it to do. And it's because they don't know what it can do. And so I often tell people a good starting step is just think about what you do in your day, write it all out, and upload that whole list of things you do in your day. Maybe even write down what you're doing every 10 minutes for a day. And then ask the AI, how could you help me through my day? And it's going to give you ideas and ways that you haven't even thought that it could have helped you.
I love that. Really great. And yeah, they're like $20 a month or something. So go pick one and buy it and start saving yourself the time. The ROI is incredible. Now, my next questions are also difficult about where you think all of this is heading. Let's stay short term. Let's say short of, I think the event horizon is AGI or something. So in the next, say, 3 to 5 years, that we don't have AGI, what do you think the economy, the solopreneur, the business world looks like?
If you just look at the, if we took more of a, let's say like an economist perspective, and to look at like the Fortune 500, right, and the stock market over the last whatever year, right, a lot of your traditional tech businesses, a lot of businesses in general have been underperforming. They've been pretty flat over the past year, right? Even within tech, a lot of these SaaS companies are down or flat. It's just the sort of Magnificent Seven, Fang, whatnot. They're the ones that are overperforming. So in some ways, you have an economy that's very interesting because you have these mega conglomerates. They're almost becoming, what space does Google not play in at this point? Now they're going into nuclear energy, that are just massively expanding, right? And they have all the data and they have identity. And Apple, that's why Apple does such an amazing job locking you into their ecosystem. And so you have, these are just getting bigger and bigger. And then it's stratifying. Then you have the Fortune 493 or 490 or whatever that are not necessarily seeing the same sort of results. And you have a longer tail that might be getting squeezed. And then you have that like rapidly emerging number of small companies, people doing their own business. Because if you're a solopreneur and you can crack the code to make $500,000 a year or whatever it is, maybe you're not making as much as you'd make at Fang, right? Which is only accessible to some people anyways. But for the most part, you'd be happy, right? Because you control your schedule, you're doing what you enjoy doing, right? So I think it's all I think it's just very interesting time. And I think the future could look, I don't know if we necessarily want like multiple $10 trillion companies, but like, I do think it's a little bit concerning of how overweighted Fang is like in the overall market cap of the economy.
Yeah, I think at some point I would be surprised if they don't the governments don't break it up, because their market cap is going to get bigger than like the GDP of it already is of most countries, let alone the bigger powers. And then they go, whoa, I'm not sure we need that. But that brings me to my next question, which is, in our lifetimes, let's say 30 years out post AGI, or if you think that's possible, what sci-fi movie do you think we end up in?
So there's two terms: there's AGI and there's ASI. And AGI is really the point where we can ask AI to do something and it can do it for us. But we ultimately, our humans are the planner. We make the plan and we tell it what to execute. ASI, artificial superintelligence, is where we are the executioners and the AI tells us what to do because it's better at planning and strategy than humans themselves. And I think whether you call it AGI or not, it's like lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
I think we're already there. I think most people feel they can ask the AI anything they need, anything they want. Assistants are starting to get baked into different experiences, and it's getting closer. It's like for a lot of people, it's like this is already there, right? Because I think AGI is an artificial construct. I don't think does it pass the Turing test? We've already passed the Turing test. Humans can already not tell if it's a human or AI on the other side. So what is this sort of, I think some people, I think Andre Karpathy, maybe some of them have come out with some loose definition of what would be the definition of AGI, but I think it's a very loose construct. I don't think of it as, oh, it has to be this.
So what about superintelligence? Do you think it's possible?
Sorry, what is what?
You think superintelligence, ASI, is possible?
In an ASI world, I think at that point, you're playing your 30-year outlook. The sci-fi movie is where the apes take over the world. You know what I'm talking about? Planet of the Apes. It's like, are humans then subservient to the AI? I think there was this, and it was debunked, but there was this article that came out that Palantir had a simulation where the flight controller in the simulation would tell the AI to go and destroy a target, and it would fly out to destroy the target. And right before it about to destroy the target in the simulation, it would tell it, no, come back home. And it did it 3 times in a row. The simulator in the person controlling the flight simulator, right? And the 4th time, before it went out, it turned around and destroyed the simulator in the simulator, right? The person controlling the simulator, and then went out because it thought it was interfering with its objective to finish interfering with its objective. And so I thought that was very interesting because it learned that, hey, this person is not letting me finish and it keeps asking for the same thing. Let me just take him out of the equation so I can then go and finish what I need to do. And this was debunked. It turned out Palantir said it was like not true, blah, blah. And some people were like, I don't know, because people are like, oh, they're just denying it, whatever. So who knows?
Plausible enough. Anyway, it certainly could happen as a.
But who cares? The point is, it's a great story of a scenario that could be very real. And I think this is the part that is starting to get interesting. Right now, we mostly engage with AI in a black box. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have access to our data. It's a self-contained system. It has, obviously, it's indexed the world's data, but it doesn't have access to my private workflows, my email, my whatever. And it can't actually do things in a way like, oh, it like will automatically lock and unlock the home's doors. It'll automatically turn on and off different cameras and things like that. Now, as we move into a more integrated experience where it starts doing some automations, this is where things start getting interesting. So if I come home and AI decides to go rogue and decides not to let me in my house, like why? And it may not be for a defensive reason. It might just be like it's thinking about something incorrectly. But like this is where I think things start getting interesting as you start plugging in more things that can move, right? When you start having humanoid robots, like what Tesla's working on, right? That introduces whole nother like layers of complexity.
I think that's happening this year. Google and Microsoft have turned it on to read all your emails and know all the information about you. And I'm sure somebody's working on agents to control lights and locks and things like that.
So I think the first step is integration of all that information. The next step is now that actually executes things, right? So it schedules things for you. And this is where a certain amount of trust is required and where things go rogue, right? Because it inadvertently leaks passwords, it inadvertently touches your financial statements. Who knows, right? And I don't think it's doing that with a negative intent. It's just going to hallucinate or it gets things wrong, right? But that's where there's going to be a lot of guardrails that are going to be needed. There's going to be different mechanisms or ways to prevent these kinds of scenarios. And there's a lot of energy being spent there in the ecosystem to try to figure that out. We actually even have an effort there in Mozilla called Odin.
Oh, that's interesting. But we are out of time to ask you about it. I'm going to have you back when we talk about this again, because I feel like a lot is going to change in the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to be fun to see how it shakes out. But I love that you're on the mission to help small businesses and get people from 0 to 1 and launching their business. It's a really cool mission. And there's a lot going on. Go to soloist.ai for the Solo app from Mozilla, the AI designer for your website. Find Raj Singh on LinkedIn. Great follow there. He's got, gosh, I don't know, 16, 20,000 people following him there. And you can find everything else he's got going on there as well. Raj, last question is, how can you help us? How can we help you?
I'm around. If people, one thing I definitely can share perspectives around startups. I've been through a number of them, bootstrap, venture backed, been through multiple exits. That's very unusual. Definitely happy to help that way. And then I'm always looking for folks in small business, looking for ways to automate some parts of their lives. It creates opportunity for things that we could build at Mozilla to maybe help for free. So if there's people who want to reach out, feel free, LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, whatnot.
Awesome. Love it. And again, if you're looking for ways to separate yourself and your story from all the AI slop that's out there, you can go to avenue9.com. I'm Mike Montague. Happy to help interview your founder, your top salesperson, your ideal client. Use those transcripts and AI information to build a contextual database for all the stuff that you want to make. And then build out the rest of your marketing plan from there in a really cool way that's human first, but AI empowered. And if that sounds like fun, go to avenue9.com. Until next time, keep going.